All right, we give praise, esteem, and honor to the Most High Yah, name of Mashal today. Let's get us John 5:39. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and there they which testify of me. And you will not come to me, might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Abba's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that come from Elohim only? Do not think that I will accuse you, the Abba. There's one that accused you, even Moses, in whom you trust. But had you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? Let's take a trip. Proverbs chapter 6. We won't be this long tonight. Oh, I got to give me a second. So Proverbs 6:1 says, Shalom, my son, if you be a surety for your friend, if you have stricken your hand with a stranger, you are snared with the words of your mouth. You are taken with the words of your mouth. So let's take a look at what we got going on here. And this might sound a little different way around. If you remember, the word surety is a ra, ayin, rosh, and bad. So you get to know the highest son. And it's to pledge, exchange, the mortgage, or give for a pledge, or to have fellowship with, or for share. So basically, this is a redemptive type of thing. So let's take it on to 1 Peter chapter 1, because this portion of what we're going to deal with, Proverbs chapter 6, we're going to spend an inordinate amount of time on that this week, because we've already been there and done that, and it just don't make no sense to stay on that, to be redundant and do it all over again. 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 16. Because it is written, be ye Kadash, for I am Kadash. And if you call on Abba, who without respect of persons judge according to every man's work, past the time of your sojourning here in fear. For as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, as silver and gold from the vain conduct received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Hamashiach, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, who truly was foreordained before the foundation of the world, what was made manifest in these last times for you, who by him do believe in Elohim that raised him up from the dead and gave him esteem, that your faith and hope might be in Elohim. So again, he say, if you make yourself a surety or a pledge for a friend. So let's take a look at something. Let's take a look at Matthew 20, because that's contained in it as forth is a pledge, because he's going to make, how he mentioned that he's going to make his life a ransom for many. And then we're going to go to John chapter 15, because then you will see that him making that ransom for his friend is making that ransom for us. John chapter 20, verse 25. But Yahushua called unto him and said, you know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. Whosoever be great among you, let him be your servant. Whosoever be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served unto, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. So it states, if you make yourself a surety for a friend and you get your hand stricken. So come to John 15. A lot of stuff is very easy, but what you see in the beginning of Proverbs chapter 6 is the manifestation of the love of Elohim for someone becoming a pledge. Now, because it's Wednesday, we don't really have the time to delve in depth into the law of redemption that's in Leviticus chapter 25. That would also back this up, as forth as you redeeming a close kinsman or a friend, if you will, because the word for friend is real. I'll get that for you real quick. You know Rosh and Ayin, so you get to know the highest. This is a friend, a companion, an intimate, a fellow citizen, if you will. You know what I'm saying? If it's a family member, this is a close person. You can read over Leviticus 25 if you wish, and you can see how a person, if they sold themselves into bondage, had to be redeemed by a near kinsman or a friend or a close intimate. So John chapter 15. And from John chapter 15, we'll go to Peter chapter 4 by verse 5. But John chapter 15 by verse 11, he said, these things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And I'll delve more into this particular notion when y'all will, everybody's present. But you know, to love somebody is not an emotive thing. You know what I'm saying? There's no emotion involved in that. And you know, when we talk about that over the course of time, you know what I'm saying? I know usually from my experience, when I get asked is love is a feeling, women usually ask me that. I don't recall a man ever asking me that. But love is not a feeling, because feelings change. You know what I'm saying? They change. Your feelings can change from moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day. This is why the word tells you to put no trust in your heart, because it's deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Because your feelings will change and your feelings will deceive you. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it tells you that love never fails. So when you see that love never fails, you can see that this is not an emotive thing. And you can never look at love in an emotive fashion, because you will find yourself in mental distress and decay if you ever look at love in an emotive fashion. Now, a lot of times when people betray love, a lot of people who are genuine with love and loyalty, that will upset them to a great end, because that means something to them. See, love and loyalty don't mean something to a lot of people. This is why some people can go from person to person and friend to friend and crew to crew, because they have no loyalty to anyone, not even themselves. Nevertheless, love is defined in a very, very simple way: service, loyalty, integrity, humility, and sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? If those things are not contained, then you actually don't love an individual. When you actually sit back and you can look in the text, you see that repeatedly, that the definition of ahab, or love of Elohim, is contained in those things: the humility, the service, the integrity, and the sacrifice. Shalom, GP. Because without those things, it's going to be impossible for you to love anyone. So let's look at Yahushua make mention of this here. Like he said, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. We can look at and see Yahushua serving. We can sit back and we can see him being humble. Matter of fact, let's do that, because I said that. Let's look at him being humble and serve in one fell swoop. And you should know what it is. We'll just make it simple. John 13:7, because we're right here. John 13:7. Well, 13:4. He said, he rise from supper and laid aside his garments and took a towel and girded himself. And he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Then come he to Simon Peter, and Peter said unto him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Yahushua answered and said unto him, what I do you know not now, but you shall know hereafter. Peter said unto him, you shall never wash my feet. Yahushua answered him, if I wash you not, you have no part with me. Now, remember, if you go read up in verse 1, he says he's about to depart out of the world, and he loved his own which were in the world, and he loved them unto the end. We can sit back and we can see how he taught these people. We can sit back and see how he served these people as forth as healing them or providing them with food when they were needy of it. But nevertheless, he manifested his love through his service. We're about to read how he manifested his love through his sacrifice. We know that he was a humble man in the forth of his love, because when he did things for people, he never saw any increased gain or notoriety. You know what I'm saying? We know that he was a man of integrity, because he said, which one of you convinced me of a sin? And if I tell you the truth, why do you not believe me? So when you read John 3:16, and it said, Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that no one would perish, then you would be able to understand what it truly is to manifest love. And there's no emotion involved with it. And a love of this type will never fail. If you have integrity, honor, humility, service, sacrifice, loyalty, that love will never fail. It would never fail. It would be quite impossible for that love to fail. People have love that fails because your love is emotive. So you're looking for a feeling. And when you don't receive that feeling, then you will move on to something else. to try to appease that feeling. But you might feel like that on Wednesday. You may not feel like that on Sunday. And you've been done missed out on Sunday. This is why your people missed out on Elohim coming in the flesh in the first place. Because they were looking for something else. This is why so many people marry the wrong people, have the wrong friends, because you're looking for a feeling, have children from the wrong people, because you were seeking after a feeling and you've been deceived. Now, I will delve into this, y'all willing, on Shabbat when everybody's more present, but you've been deceived from the Eurocentric vantage point of the teaching of love and romance of things of this nature, which was totally engineered and sent towards women because men are going to follow after what women do, and you have purchased it and bought it and went after it and co-opted it as yourself. And this is where the problem comes in at, and this is what separates us from having the ability to love the way Elohim says to love. This is why many women in this society reject it, because with his love comes order, structure, and discipline and selflessness. And the average woman in America has not been raised to value those particular traits. And it's because of the culture that you live in. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, you're going to follow, especially our women, they're going to follow the culture that they dwell in. So this is a carnal culture. So we follow after carnal things. If we were still attached to a heavenly culture, then we would be seeking after heavenly things. It's just that simple. So a lot of the things that we've been discussing recently, I'm trying to turn us into 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional thinkers, meaning looking at things in a complete view. That 4th dimension, for lack of a better term, is really, truth be told, the final wrong, which is to add the ruach into it, which is adding the consequences of your thoughts and decisions according to the word and not according to your personal feelings, beliefs, or thought processes, but the things that please Elohim, that you would view every thought, every move, every decision according to the word, and that you would judge people and things according to the spirit that is being manifested, to be able to see, is this spirit from Yah or is this spirit from another place? Because you can't think in a simplistic fashion and serve Elohim and expect to achieve success. Nevertheless, back to John chapter 15. It's not time to play. And you know it too. John 15 and 12 yet again. Sit down, my lad. Sit down, my lad. Sit down. Sit down, my lad. Thank you. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I've loved you. Greater love have no man than this, that a man lay his life down for his friends. Listen to what he tell you. You are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. So in order to show that love to be his friend, you would have to serve him. See, you can't love Yahuwah without serving him. And see, this goes back into regards of when he tell you that a wife should submit herself to her husband. You can't love your husband if you don't serve him. Now, I mentioned to y'all the other day what JFK said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Because when you look at that level of selflessness that's contained in that, that's what love is. See, a woman can't love her husband and she doesn't have a desire to serve him, that she only has a desire to be served of him. That is a Eurocentric, Anglo-Saxon, and Western way of viewing things. That is not the heavenly culture that was mandated from above. We went through this thing plenty of times. That does not mean that a woman is very precious. Just like we read the other day, she is to be cherished and honored, and you're supposed to dwell with her according to the knowledge of Elohim. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean you rule over your wife as a tyrant. That doesn't mean that you be a douche to her. That doesn't mean that you treat her like a slave. You're to serve her and she is to serve you. But we live in a society where it's told that the man ought to serve the woman and that the woman ought to do absolutely nothing and that she's entitled to that service. And that's what causes a lot of women, at least when it comes to you dealing with the word, of not latching on to the heavenly way as they should. See, let me show you something. I'll reiterate this on Shabbat too. See, look at Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16. It also takes into point, and I was talking with a brother about this the other day. It also, again, and we were talking about it on Shabbat as well. It's because men are not operating in the fashion that they ought to operate, so the behavior is being tolerated. So you're not being a functional and proper leader by not tolerating ungodly behavior. Now, is it possible for you to not tolerate ungodly behavior when you were in an ungodly state? No, it's not possible. But once you understand who your Elohim is and that you begin to operate in that fashion, you can't let that stuff slide. It has to be nipped in the bud. It has to be stopped. You can't allow that to continue. You can't allow that to continue. That is a pathway to destruction, and it's a disservice to your children. I keep telling y'all that too, man. You know, once you have the children, man, your life doesn't matter to a certain extent. That's what you signed up for. You know what I'm saying? Of course, you'll take time for you and your spouse to do things of that nature, but at the end of the day, your number one duty is to prep and prepare your children for life. And I told y'all this once, and I'll tell you this again. Are you exposing them more to the world than they are to Yahuwah? Because if they're getting exposed more to the world than they are to Yahuwah, do not be shocked when they reject this way. And it's going to be your fault because you failed them. You know what I'm saying? That's going to be your fault. If you didn't diligently do everything possible to expose them to the way of Yahuwah, but left them prey to the ways and wiles of the world, that's going to lay in your lap. Who else lap is it going to lay in? You're going to have to take accountability for that. Well, Travis just said his wife just had their child. I think that's his fourth one, a little boy.
Okay. Hurry up.
Jeremiah 6:16. Make it 13. He say, from the least of them, even unto the greatest of them, everyone is given to covetousness, and from the prophet even to the priest, everyone deal falsely. And see, and that be the problem. Because we all are going after our lust, from the greatest of us to the least of us. And then the people who's supposed to be giving us the word, they telling lies. This is one of the reasons why he tell you covetousness is idolatry, because covetousness is your desire. So you begin to worship your desires and what you want, and you become your own God. This is why he tell you not to covet. There's a reason for that. He said, they have healed also the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, saying shalom, shalom, where there is no shalom. Were they ashamed when they had committed abominations? Nay, they were not all ashamed. Neither could they blush. Therefore they shall fall among them that fall. At the time that I visit them, they shall be cast down, saith Yahuwah. Thus saith Yahuwah, stand you in the ways, see and ask for the old paths, and where is the good way? And walk therein, and you shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. And see, that's the problem. See, we're supposed to be coming back to the old path. But see, you like the new path because the new path empowers your desires. You know what I'm saying? And that's the problem that we have to fight. See, I'm gonna ask y'all the women a question because it's dominant in this society about liberalism. A lot of men have taken on liberalism, and we may have even taken on these things without realizing. And it's really more so have you co-opted something subconsciously and not realize that you've co-opted it because you're bombarded with it on a day-to-day basis. You know what I'm saying? Case in point, I'll give you an example. I was looking at an interview where they were mad with John McEnroe. Do you know that? He's a tennis player. He's before his time. And he said something about Serena Williams. He said, and this is an old interview, by the way. He said if Serena Williams was on the men's tour, she would be the 700th ranked man in the world. And niggas was mad and said, how could you say that? You ought to apologize to her. And he refused. The reason why that's liberal, because you don't never want to, you're not allowed to say that a woman can't do what a man can do. Now, anybody with common sense knows full well that Serena Williams could not compete with men on the tennis tour on a regular basis and be successful. You know what I'm saying? But you're not allowed to say that because of liberalism. A better example of it, well, it's not a better because there's plenty. You can't say nothing about a tranny. Like when I put that in there, say, hey, if you say a trans, these people say that if you do not want a trans woman, you're transphobic. Nigga, that is a man. You know what I'm saying? That's not a woman. Liberal thinking says, even though this man says he's a woman, you should accept him as a woman and date him if he has interest in you. A lot of black women think that this is the proper way to think, that there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen many black women, look how many black women hang with punks and promote homosexuals, you know what I'm saying? And go to church every week. And that's liberal way of thinking, because what it does is it causes a divide between man and woman, and constantly have man and woman competing against one another versus complementing one another. And then this gets passed down to the children, and what ends up happening is the ruling class will always continue to rule over the people whom they're ruling over, because they're fighting themselves over trivial matters of which they created in the first place to cause that divide. You know what I'm saying? Because these things were never created for our benefit. You know what I'm saying? It was always created for nefarious means. But how do we know that? Most of us are just living. You just trying to survive. Your people going to work every day. They're not concerned with that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But you're indoctrinated with it day by day, whether it be through music, whether it be through television, whether it be through movies, commercials. You're bombarded with it on every cut and corner.
Sit down a little bit.
So when we look at the mercy and grace of our Elohim, Yahuwah of hosts is his name, and he's allowed us to know him and know his way. This allows us to not fall prey to the wiles of the devil, and to see his devices, and to see his plots, and to see his plans.
In your room.
Because whether y'all want to accept it or not, you live in a satanic, and when I say satanic, adversarial culture. Everything that they do is against Yahuwah, period. You got to remember, that's all Satan means, is adversary. So everything that they promote is to have you be an enemy of Yah. You know what I'm saying? Period. And we might think that some things aren't that big of a deal, but he told us enmity he said friendship with the world is enmity. So if you're a friend of the world, that means you adhere to what the world got going on because you serve it, and he will hate you for it. He said, if the love of the world is in you, the love of the Father is not in you. That's why it's important to be aware of these ideologies and not partake in them. This is why he say, come out from among her and be ye separate, so you won't be partakers of her plagues. Because I'm just sitting here thinking off the top of my head, because there's many things that these people promote that are against Yah that we think is cool. Like I just told you, I was looking at something the other day, and I've been telling you that, like, it is good to, if you need to, like, go to therapy and things of this nature. What we're talking about a few weeks, but if you pay attention, they teach you to worship yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're teaching you to do. You know what I'm saying? They'll help you get a better adjustment of yourself, but then to certain, it's not all therapists, but they teach you to worship at the altar of yourself.
Go lay down. All right, go to your bed. Silence in your bed.
And it's on purpose. You know what I'm saying? We can go to any college in America, and you will see a liberal way of teaching, depending on the institution, and it's to get you to go against Yahuwah. Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. Don't let these people make no fool out you. 1 Peter 4 and 5. Silence. Silence. Silence.
Mari, hush. Go get in the bed.
You done forfeited that right, cuz. Let it go.
Go get in the bed.
In fact, make it 1 Peter 4 and 1. Yeah, and that was a good point of something I seen too when you deal with the mother goddess. You know who the mother goddess always has with her? Her son. And that goes into something we haven't talked about in detail in a while, but how, you know, they say that, you know, black women raise their daughters and are hard on their sons, or are soft on their sons, and that's for the purpose of that, you know, that ISIS and the horrors type of thing they got going on, and the mother goddess and her son, you know, and all that other type of stuff they got going on, well, they're subliminally imparting unto you idolatry and things of that sort. 1 Peter 4 and 1. For as much then as a Mashal have suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourself likewise with the same mind, for he that suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. So again, there's the sacrifice element of love, that one that he should no longer live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lust of men, but to the will of Elohim. And there's loyalty. For the time past of our life may suffice us to wrought the will of the Gentiles when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revilings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries, wherein they think it strange that you run not with them to the same excess of riot, speaking evil of you. Who shall give account to him that is ready to judge the quick and the dead? For this cause was the gospel preached also to them that are dead, that they might be judged according to the men in the flesh, to live according to Elohim. But the end of all things is at hand. Be therefore sober and watch under prayer. And above all things, have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. So it's sitting here telling you to be hospitable to one another without holding a grudge. Then see, that goes back to that Acts chapter 2 when it said the people went from house to house breaking bread, not looking at they had anything in common, because that was the selflessness and the service and the sacrifice that is reiterating, which is also in the book of Proverbs as well, where that love covering a multitude of sins, of which where he got that from. And when you look at the love that Yahushua showed with the same exact things that we're mentioning, the humility, because he humbled himself to be hung on the stake, the serve, because he was willing to come serve the people and not himself, because he said, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man know his doctrine, you'll know the same if it's true. His loyalty to his fathers, his integrity to he manifested that love. That's what covered Joe's sins, because that's when he lives forever and ceases. It never ceases. It never stops. To look at Psalms 19. This is in my head from early this morning. 19 and 7. It says the Torah of Yahuwah is perfect, converting the soul. So it's shuv, it's going to turn you. The testimony of Yahuwah is sure. It makes wise the simple. You know what I'm saying? See, a person's level of wisdom, especially for a woman, because you know what I'm saying, will increase by her desire to seek wisdom. See, a lot of people want to be wise and have understanding, but it really comes down to your desire to actually attain it. You know what I'm saying? Because most people don't have a desire to attain wisdom, so it doesn't happen. But he'll say he'll take the simple, and let's give you the word for simple, and make you wise by his testimony. He said he can make you wise just from his testimony. And remember, Yahushua, the scripture, you know the scriptures which are able to make you wise unto salvation. That's what Paul wrote to Timothy. You know what I'm saying? And Yahushua was made unto you wisdom. So you have to sit back and look at how this is able to do that. And it still takes us back to Proverbs 23 and 23, which is the thing that we've been dealing with for a while now. And when you look at simple, the word is pathetic. And it really means to be someone who is naive, foolish, open-minded, simple. So you look at you naive, you don't know nothing. See, we don't even realize. That's why I say, how long will you simple ones love simplicity? See, that's a whole key thing. See, we come to Yahuwah, we think we know something. And you don't realize how simple you are because you don't know him. That's why he tells you to return to the ancient paths and the old way, and you'll find rest for your soul. But you say, no, I don't want to do that. I like the new way. And you can't do that. That's not what it is. You keep verse 8 though. The statutes of Yahuwah are right and rejoicing the heart. The commandment of Yahuwah is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yahuwah is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of Yahuwah are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, much more than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned, and in keeping them there is great reward. Look at man, that man told you that word. It's sweeter than honey and the honeycomb. You know what I'm saying? It's sweet to the taste. But you would have to return and understand. Because guess what? See, this is why some of the stuff that I be talking about as far as the world is concerned, it ain't for no other reason, because the commandment of Yahuwah is pure, so it opened my eyes. So now I have eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart to understand and perceive, so I can see what it is and what it ain't. A lot of us can't do that because we caught up in the world and thinking that these things don't mean nothing. It's not that big of a deal. And it is that big of a deal because it could cost you your life. You know what I'm saying? But back to Proverbs chapter 6, though. Remember, he said, my son, if you be a surety for your friend, if you stricken your hand with a stranger. So let's look at this here, striking his hand with a stranger. This should be pretty obvious. We've seen that when you're dealing with a friend in this regard, this is dealing with Yahshua offering himself up. When you look at stricken, the word is takah, and it literally means to thrust, to drive a weapon, or to give a blow, to strike or pledge oneself. So if you pledged yourself and been struck by your hand, you know that's the car with a stranger. And of course, you know that's somebody who's loathsome, strange woman, be estranged, or one who is alienated. So now you've taken a blow in your hand with someone who is alienated. Well, let's look at Isaiah 59 and 1, and let's see who and why they are alienated. Isaiah 59 and 1. Behold, Yahuwah's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither is his ear heavy that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have separated between you and your Elohim, and your sins have hid his face from you that he will not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies, and your tongues have muttered, perverseness. So when we turn back and we look in the Gospels in this regard of what he's referring to, Yahushua was stricken for a stranger and made himself a surety for a friend. That stranger would be Yasharal, because we made ourselves strange to our Elohim because we were mired in our sins. See, in John chapter 8, he said, if you don't believe that I am he, you shall die in your sins. If you don't believe that I am he. Well, we know they struck him through his hands. Let's take a look and see. We can go to Mark 14, because that's where I'm at, or Mark 15, that's where I'm at. (15 and 22). And of course, the cough is the open hand, the palm. He said they bring him, this is Mark 15 and 22, and they bring him under the place Golgotha, which is being interpreted the place of a skull. And they gave him to drink wine mingled with myrrh, but he received it not. And when they had crucified him, they parted his garments, casting lots upon them what every man should take. And it was the third hour, and they crucified him. And the superscription of his accusation was written over, Malik of the Yahudim. So what we're seeing is here is how they've taken him and they've stricken him through with a weapon, which would have been that nail, and hung him on this tree. So he's made himself a pledge or a surety for a friend. I mean, he's pledged his life for you. This is one of the reasons why Paul wrote to the assembly in Corinth that they ought not live for themselves, but live for the person who died and rose again from the dead, which is manifesting your love through your service. See, a lot of us don't realize that that's the key component of love, is the ability to serve. This is why one of the reasons why I made mention of, like, say, the widows. Did they wash the, like, if we was in a time right now of women having to wash godly men's feet, a lot of them would balk and say, absolutely not. They were, of course, it's not necessarily needed in these days and times because you're not walking around the desert with sandals on, but a lot would balk just at the thought or notion of serving a man. Why do a lot of them feel that way? It's nothing more than the society you live in. I'm not just going to say that naturally every woman is just rebellious and doesn't want to do it. It's the crafting of the society that you live in. They give you that thought process. The same token where you have young men who feel the way that a woman should take care of him because that's what his mother has done. So he's going out in the world looking for a mother and not a wife. So that's why you see that. Why do you also see that? Because this culture and society has confused gender roles. You know what I'm saying? Telling you that the woman is equal to the man, that the woman can do what the man does. You know what I'm saying? This, that, there, and the third. You know what I'm saying? Telling a man that it's okay for him to take on feminine roles and to do feminine things. But then the women of the culture will stand up and say, what a real man at that will do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, when this is what you say you wanted. See, when they really only want equality as it suits them. You know what I'm saying? You know, we want fair wages, fair job opportunities, fair opportunity to go to college, but you don't want all the responsibility that a man has to carry because it doesn't suit you. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that responsibility right now. Why can't the man provide for me? Why can't the man do this and do that? And because of that attitude, this is why a lot of women who think in this fashion don't have a man or have less of a man, and they usually have less of a man to control it because he's easily controllable, to allow them to participate in hijinks and buffoonery and whoredom, if you will. Because you have to remember that what whoredom is. Whoredom is not just giving your body away to random men. Whoredom is a mentality. And with whoredom comes undisciplined, inconsistent, unstructured, wayward people. You can do whatever you want to do. There's no standard. There's no discipline. There's no accountability. There's nothing. You can do whatever you want to do. This is why Babylon is called the mother of harlots or the mother of whores or the great whore. Because in Babylon, you can do whatever you want to do. When you look in America, you can worship any god you want. You want to lay with a goat, you can lay with a goat. You want to be with a man, you can be with a man. You know what I'm saying? You can do whatever you want. That's whoredom. You have to understand that. That's whoredom. I've been telling y'all that for years, but that's what whoredom is. Whoredom is not just having sex with a lot of people. You could be a married woman and be a whore because you're rebellious, you're proud, you're stubborn, you refuse to submit, you refuse to obey, you refuse to serve, you're selfish and you're entitled. That is the mind of a whore. And you could have been sleeping with the same man for 20 years and you would still be a whore. That's how your whore would see you, as a no good whore. See, that's rough. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. It is what it is. Come on back over here to Proverbs chapter 6. It is what it is. And it's going to be what it's going to be. Listen what he tell you right in verse 2. Right? He said, you are snared with the words of your mouth, and you are taken with the words of your mouth. So when you look at being snared with the words of your mouth, all this is going back to is when they try to use Yahushua's words against it. When you look at snared, it is Yakosh. It is to lure, to entice, to lay a snare, or to set a trap, or to be caught by bait. You know, Yah, Kuf, and Shan. And we'll take a look at that in a couple places of the gospel because that's pretty plain. And let's take a look at Luke 11, if I'm not mistaken, and from Luke 11, John chapter 18. This is why sometimes, it tell you that in Proverbs, sometimes a wise man hold it in and a fool can be known through the multitude of his words. This is one of the reasons why you see Yahusha not saying things in a lot of instances, because a lot of times people will try to get you and catch you in your speech, hoping that through a multitude of words that they can use your words against you to destroy you. See, I'm finna get ready to deal with a situation, circumstance similar to that now, except that I know my words, and my words will not be able to ensnare and entrap me in any type of matter. Luke 11:49. Therefore also said the wisdom of Elohim, I will send in prophets and apostles, and some of them shall they slay and persecute, that the blood of all the prophets which was shed from the foundation of the world may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zacharias was perished between the altar and the temple. Truly I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. Woe unto you lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. You have not entered into yourselves, and them that were entering in you hindered. And he said these things unto them. The scribes and the Pharisees began to urge him vehemently and to provoke him to speak of many things, laying wait for him, seeking to catch something out of his mouth that they may accuse him. So remember what we're looking at in Proverbs 6, right? He's already made a surety for a friend. And he said, but if you be snared with the words of your mouth, and if you're taken by the words of your mouth. Now, remember in Matthew, you can come over here to John 18. Remember in Matthew 27, they tried to say, oh, this man saying he'll destroy the temple and build it back in 3 days. They were sending people to be false witnesses against him to catch him in his speech. John 18:19. See, the whole book's about Yahushua and his testimony and his righteousness. And if you believe on him, you shall be saved. The high priest then asked Yahushua of his disciples and of his doctrine. Yahushua answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, whither the Yahudim always resort, and in secret have I said nothing. Why ask you me? Ask them which heard me what I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. He said, they know what I've been teaching. So you're not going to be able to ensnare me and catch me in anything. This is, again, one of the reasons why you see when they came to him that he kept his mouth closed. He kept his mouth closed. Back to Proverbs chapter 6 and didn't say anything to these fools, because that's what a lot of people want to do, because a lot of people move around like an agent of chaos. Some people love chaos and drama and to stir things up and to cause commotion. You know what I'm saying? And you have to be cognizant and weary of that and then move accordingly as far as dealing with individuals of that type of ilk. So when we look at Proverbs 6 and 3, say, do this now, my son, deliver yourself. When you will come into the hand of your friend, go, humble yourself and make sure you're a friend. So now he's telling you to do this now. Deliver yourself when you are coming to the hand of your friend, go. And now when you look at humble, it's rafas. It's to stamp oneself down, humble oneself. It is Raj, Pay, and Shan. Hold on. I definitely should have already had that up and ready. So when we look at Rafas and we take that Raj, that Shan, and that Pay, we see how the words of the highest consumed. Who did the words of the highest consume? It consumed his son because he humbled himself. And he said to make sure your friend. So let's make sure, look at that, I should say. When you look at make sure, it's Rahab. Rahab, and it means to disturb, to alarm, to awe, to confuse, to make bold or proud, to storm against or behest, or to behave proudly, act stormily, or boastfully. So he said to behave proudly or boastfully or arrogantly or insolently or importune or to disturb. But when this one here, alarm or having awe your friend, because that's going to be more concise of what we're looking at. Also, when I mentioned that word for stranger, was stricken, I should say, was takab. And it's the Tau, the Kuf, and the Ayin. And you know, that's to know the final covenant. So when we know when Yahushua was stricken and he showed him his hands, he was showing them the final covenant or the renewed covenant and the foreshadowing of giving them the Ruach HaKodesh, because actually in John 20, he breathed on them and told them to receive it. So when you see when he's stricken, it brings in the covenant, and he did it for his friends. But now he's telling them, deliver yourself when you come into your hand of your friend. Go humble yourself and leave in awe your friend. Have them amazed. Well, where do we see that? Well, number one, we know in Hebrews it said that he was heard and that he feared. And in the epistle of Philippians, he said, we'll grab that one in Philippians, chapter 2, verse 6, if you will. You know, of course, you know that he told his apostles he would have to die. You know how Peter reacted, because he had to humble himself. He humbled himself under death, which is a manifestation of his love, which again shows you how humility is an aspect of love. This is why one of the reasons why that Peter wrote that in the sight of Elohim, a woman with a quiet and meek spirit is very high value to him. You know what I'm saying? But that's not a high value in this particular society. I just was looking at a clip. I remember when it happened, when they got mad at James Winston because he went to a school and said little boys should be strong and that women, you little girl, should be soft-spoken. And the liberal-minded individuals were offended at the fact that he said a little girl should be soft-spoken and demure. But this is the way of Elohim. This is what Yahuwah says is of great value to him. But that's not of great value to the world, because the world is of a Hashatan influence, an adversarial influence against the old paths and the ancient way. And it just takes a level of understanding to know those devices and see that. Because it's a lot of y'all mothers. So it's your duty and job to teach your daughter how to be a wife. Where else is she going to learn how to be a wife from? She going to learn it from you. And if you don't know how to be a wife or don't desire to be a wife, then your daughter is not going to desire to be one or be one either. And the main reason why we don't feel, that's why I dropped that link in there with Michelle Obama. You want to be more than to be known as somebody's wife. That is a Hashatan influence. That is an adversarial influence for women to buck against the way of Yahuwah and to detest it. But we can't see that because we're looking at it through carnal eyes with a carnal mind. So you might, yeah, she's right. I don't see a big deal of that. But there's no shame in being a man's wife. Because you can see that virtuous woman in Proverbs 31 was known amongst the gates, among all the righteous. That she was a righteous woman and she was praised everywhere that she went. And people blessed her everywhere that she went. But we don't see that as an accolade worth attaining because the world has diminished it. Nevertheless, Philippians chapter 2 and verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Yahushua HaMashiach, who being in the form of Elohim thought it not robbery to be equal with Elohim, but made himself of no reputation and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the stake. So when you see that, that's a different type of mindset. When he say, do this now, my son, and deliver yourself. When you come into the hand, well, how is he going to deliver himself? Well, he's going to deliver himself by the promise of which his father made, which is to raise him from the dead. Which is to raise him from the dead. And a lot of us don't see that resurrection of the dead as a real thing. When you look at deliver, you got Nasal, and that's to snatch away, to deliver, to rescue, to save. Noon, Sod, and Lamad. To rescue, to recover. Also to deliver from enemies or troubles or death, or deliver from sin and guilt. So when you see the way of the shepherd is life. The way of Yahuwah is life because Yahuwah is life. Because it's the Ruach that quicken, the flesh profit nothing. So because in order for him to deliver himself, when he came into the hand of his friend, which he came into the hand of Yasharal, he humbled himself and then he amazed them by going up on this stake and dying and then resurrecting from the dead. And through this, we can see the goodness and mercy and righteousness of Elohim and strive to manifest that love that it may cover a multitude of sins. But hallelujah for Yahushua in the word. I appreciate everybody's time. Love everybody. Bless everybody at the house of Yahuwah in the name of Yahushua. We'll keep on going. We'll probably be more on the Proverbs 7 on Shabbat, because like I said, we just recently went through the back end of Proverbs chapter 6, so we won't need to be redundant. I also know we just recently went through Proverbs 8 not too long ago as well, so we're not going to spend an inordinate amount of time on something that we just recently did within the last 30 to 45 days. But we'll also be looking at the aspects of things that's being discussed so that we can love in a godly fashion, have understanding in a godly fashion, so that we can make sure that our souls are preserved. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So again, blessings out the house of Yahweh. I appreciate everybody's time. And Yahuwah willing, till the Shabbat, we'll do it again.